Well, fairly recently, a new modality of approaching insulin responses and diabetic management has surfaced. These are the drugs that affect the protein GLP-1. What is GLP-1? GLP-1 is called an incretin. Incretin means it's going to increase something. It is a little peptide that is released from the small intestine whenever you eat. Once it gets into the blood, it then acts on beta cell of the pancreas to augment glucose-dependent insulin secretion. So incretin increases insulin production. Exenatide is the first drug to have been marketed to work on this pathway. It is actually working on that incretin receptor, which is known as a GLP-1 receptor. Exenatide is a full agonist of its receptor. It is used in type 2 diabetes, and it's used in combination with other drugs. Its primary side effect, besides classic nausea with so many drugs, is hypoglycemia, particularly when it's used in combination with sulfonylurea. Only very recently are we seeing yet another way of working on incretins with the drug sitagliptin. Sitagliptin is Januvia, and Januvia is very heavily marketed right now, which is why it very quickly made it to board exam question. Sitagliptin actually will inhibit dipeptidyl peptidase 4, known as DPP4. This is the enzyme that actually breaks down the incretin GLP-1, so it'll prevent the actual GLP-1 from being inactivated. Let me correct the slide here. So inhibiting the inactivation of GLP-1. Well, we can look at all this with an actual little diagram. This is your incretin, your little peptide known as GLP-1, released by the small intestine after a meal. And its primary effect are to cause an increased insulin release, which in turn will cause a drop in glucagon production, all of this resulting in what we want to see in our diabetic, a decreased blood glucose. Two drugs. Exenatide is the long-acting GLP-1 full agonist, so exenatide, if you want, would work right here on the actual receptors. I'm going to call them R. And through receptor binding cause the increased insulin and the decreased glucagon production. And then to the left you have here the actual catabolism of incretins. The catabolism of incretins is through the dipeptidyl peptidase 4 enzyme, which would inactivate GLP-1. Sitagliptin is the drug that will inhibit DPP4 and shut down the inactivation of the incretin GLP-1. This concludes the drugs used in diabetes.